Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for another video. We got a fun one prepared today. What we'll be doing is we'll be looking over all of our round 2 matchups we have for the 2024 college football season. We're going to completely break down these 4 games. Don't forget, this is the first year of the 12-team playoff. Round 1 is in the books. Now we have round 2 coming up. We're going to look the games over, try to predict the outcome, who's going to win, who's going to lose, and what the final score will be. Make sure to hit that like button. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. If you have any comments about these games or anything else, please drop them below, and I will always make sure to respond. Every week we're going over every single college football game, the top 25, the non-top 25, the bowl season games, as well as all of our playoff games as we're going through all of these rounds. We also do the same thing for every NFL game every week, breaking down every game and doing the best bets for all of our football games, the money lines, the spreads, the over-unders. If you're a football fan, if you're a sports fan, make sure to make sure to subscribe to the channel. Like I said, we're going to be looking at our round 2 matchups. We have some really good games. We have some teams who have some easier games. We have some teams who have a really tough path to the college football championship. But let's go ahead and get started looking at these games. The very first one we have is going to be our Fiesta Bowl matchup. It's going to be on December 31st, this Tuesday, next week at 7:30 p.m. on ESPN. We're going to have number 6 Penn State 12-2 versus number 3 Boise State 12-1 coming off of that bye week. Right now, Penn State heavy favorites in this matchup. They have a 64.8% chance to win this game, 10.5-point favorites. That is a massive spread favorite there for round 2 of the college football playoff. The over-under is going to be 52.5. Penn State, obviously, they're coming off of a win versus SMU round 1. They were rolling. Drew Aller looked great, but it's that defense that was leading the way. Warren continues to do what he does. It's very hard to move the ball consistently on Penn State. Very good secondary, but it's that defensive line. The pressure they get from their defensive line, shutting down the run game, completely taking the run game away from their opponent. That's going to be easier said than done here. Boise State has a top 10 rushing team in the nation. They have the best running back in the nation, Ashton Gentry. He runs all over anyone. He's put up video game numbers throughout this season. It's going to be strength on strength. Who's going to dominate the line of scrimmage in this game? It's Penn State's defensive line versus the rushing attack from Boise State, who's very one-dimensional. Now, they don't have a bad passing offense. They can move the ball, but so much is predicated and based off of running the ball and turning that into play-action passing. Looking at Penn State, obviously, they're going to have Drew Aller. He's closing in on 3,100 yards, 21 touchdowns, 7 picks. A lot of pressure was taken off of James Franklin. A lot of people say he cannot win the big game. You know, maybe it's true, maybe it's not. He got a playoff win representing the Big Ten here. Penn State is battle-tested throughout the season. They did make the Big Ten championship. They had a pretty tough schedule. They played a lot of pretty big teams. One thing James Franklin and Penn State doesn't do is they usually never drop a so-so game to a so-so team. Usually they win the games they're supposed to win. It's the big game you have to worry about. So technically going off of that, you would think that they should be beating Penn State here. Looking at their offense, they're averaging 33.9 points a game. Very balanced. Throwing for 246.1, running for 201.2, also one of the best rushing teams in the nation. When we look at their running backs, they have one of the best 1-2 running back punches in the country right now. They can keep those guys fresh, just cycling them in and out. Drew Aller's also been known to take off, spread the game out, and normally giving up 15.9 points a game. That's a top 10 defense in all of college football. They're only giving up 100.3 rushing yards on the ground. That's why I was saying it's going to be strength on strength, their rush defense versus Boise State's rushing offense. Looking at Boise State, they're going to be led by Matson. He's closing in on 2,800 yards, 22 touchdowns, 3 picks. He's had a really solid year so far. Definitely complimented Ashton Gentry, but he can also scramble, take off when he has to, but he can hit the passing attack when he needs to. But that Penn State defensive line, those linebackers, they're going to be in his face a lot of this game. They're going to be putting him under a lot of pressure. They want to take Gentry from you. They want to put the game on Madsen's shoulders. Can he beat Penn State in those 3rd and long situations? We saw how they bottled up Jennings. They kept him in the pocket, kept him from being able to scramble for those first downs. They're going to try to do the same thing here to Boise State. We know what Penn State's going to do. Aggressive defense from Allen. Right now, they're averaging 39.1 points a game. Very capable offense, throwing for 224.2, running for 250.5. They can run the ball. No one has stopped Ashton Gentry yet. The Oregon Ducks defense did not stop Ashton Gentry. How does Penn State perform here? They're giving up 21.9 points a game. They give up almost 400 yards of offense every game. They don't have a bad defense, but they have a shaky defense. Penn State just has to play time of possession, control the clock, control the ground game, run that clock down. Looking at the playmakers here on Penn State's side, Singleton, Allen, cycling those guys in, keeping those legs fresh, and nobody on this earth can guard Tyler Warren. He's an X factor on any team. He's going to get his. No one's going to be able to stop him. You want to keep your eye on Tyler Warren. If Boise State's able to push Penn State into third and long situations, Warren will be getting the ball fed to him. And for Boise State, Ashton Gentry, 2,500 yards, 30 total touchdowns, video game numbers. But does that translate into success here versus Penn State? And they also have Camper. So what's our outcome going to be for this game? We're going to go with Boise State being able to get some yardage on the ground at some points, moving the ball, getting shut down. Overall, we have Penn State pulling out the dub here, winning this one 33-24. And then we're moving on to our Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl matchup on ESPN at 1 p.m. January 1st. This is going to be next Wednesday. We're going to have number 5 Texas, 12-2. They had that loss in the SEC Championship. They just won this past weekend versus Clemson. Clemson was able to perform a lot better than a lot of people thought. We weren't surprised because we know Clemson can score with the big chunk plays. They'll be playing number 4 Arizona State, 11-2. Big 12 champ coming off the bye. Right now, Texas Longhorns, massive favorites here. 79.6% chance to win this game. 14-point favorites. The over-under here is going to be 51.5. Texas, this is not the offense they had last season. Yes, they have a good offense. They have a capable offense. They're not moving the ball as consistently as they were last year. They're able to move the ball, but they're not blowing people away. They were led by their run game this past weekend. The jury's still out on Bond. Will he be playing this game? We don't know. That's a massive loss. He is considered a first-round wide receiver. Very talented team, though. The number 4 overall roster, according to ESPN. No one's going to be out-talented here. One thing Texas has, one thing we know for sure they have, is a really good defense. Statistically, they have a top 10 defense. They're going to get after it. They are physical. One of the best defensive lines in the country. Some people think the best defensive line in the country. Top 10 in quarterback pressures. Top 10 in tackles for a loss. Top 10 in turnovers. Can their defensive line shut down Scattaboo for Arizona State? Very similar game plan between the Penn State versus Boise State matchup. It's going to be Penn State's defensive line in the trenches versus Arizona State. Can Arizona State, who's kind of they're a very tough team. They want to beat you at the line of scrimmage as well. We know Texas is probably going to win that battle, but can Scattaboo overcome it? Looking at Texas Longhorns, Quinn Ewers closing in on 2,900 yards, 26 touchdowns, 10 picks. He's been banged up. We did see Arch Manning in packages this past weekend in round 1. Texas overall, they're averaging 33.9 points a game, throwing for 288.4. Running for 173.5. The run game definitely got going versus Clemson, but Clemson doesn't have a very good defense. They don't have the defense they had of old, of the previous decade. Arizona State also, they don't have a good defense. They have a feisty team. They have a team that wants to fight you, but they don't have the defense that Texas has. Texas, by far, is going to be the more talented team here. They're only giving up 13.3 points a game. That's the kicker there. 13.3 points a game. Their defense is going to get after it. They're going to be physical. They're going to be aggressive. If you take Scattaboo away, is Arizona State going to still be able to consistently move the ball? Levitt, great season so far. Very underappreciated passer. Closing in on 2,700 yards, 24 touchdowns, 5 picks. Props to Dillingham for what he's done with this team. They got dropped by the Pac-12. They went to the Big 12. They had nowhere to call home, and they made it to the playoffs. They even got a bye week. No matter what happens here, very successful season for them. They're averaging 33.1, throwing for 234.8, running for 198.8, one of the best rushing teams in the nation, because we know they have a top 5 running back in the entire country. They're giving up 21.3 points a game. They give up a lot more yards than Texas does on defense. They don't have a great defense, but it's more than serviceable. Can they keep Texas at bay long enough for that ground game to be able to take effect? Probably not going to work, first, second, third, but maybe by the 4th, Texas will get wore out. I don't foresee that happening. Texas is deep. Texas is talented. Looking at the playmakers, obviously for Texas, they're going to have Wisner, Golden, Bond. They have Ewers. They have Manning coming in for packages. And on the other side, it's all going to come down to Scattaboo. 1,600 yards, and he missed the game. Still has 1,600 yards. And then you have Tyson. He's not going to be playing this game, but their wide receiver core as a whole stepped up their last game. That's a lot of pressure to ask. If Texas is able to get in Levitt's face, who's going to get open down the field? Someone's going to have to get open. Scatterboo can't run for 250 yards in this game. They're going to need their playmakers to step up. So what's the outcome that we have? We do have this game being actually pretty close, but we're going to go with Texas pulling off the win here, winning this one 30-24. I have a lot of questions about Texas and their offense being able to perform every game versus, let's say, the more talented teams, the Ducks, Ohio State. We know that the issues they've had on offense versus Georgia. I think they'll be able to perform enough to keep Arizona State at bay, move on in the next round. That defense can still win you national championships. They win this one 30-24. And this next game is a tough one. This is, let's call it what it is. This is the best game of the year. This is the best playoff game we've seen in college football in, I would say, years. Coming up at 5 p.m. on ESPN, we're going to have the Rose Bowl game, 5 p.m., number 8, Ohio State, 11-2, coming off of that thrashing, that beatdown of the Tennessee Volunteers versus number 1, the Oregon Ducks, 13-0, coming off that Big Ten championship win. It's a shame that Oregon, the only undefeated team in Division I football, they have to play the Buckeyes round 2. They have the hardest path to national championship. They got dealt a blow. We need to change the way that we set off the playoff format. They need to reevaluate these teams after run 1, reseed them. Right now, the Buckeyes. No one's coming into this game hotter than Ohio State. We picked them to beat Tennessee very handedly, but they beat the crap out of the Tennessee Volunteers, the SEC's number 3 team. It was versus the Buckeyes, the Big Ten number 3 team, and Ohio State won that game handedly on both sides of the ball. They opened up the passing attack. That's one thing they were refusing to doing versus Michigan. They kept trying to run the ball downhill. It wasn't working. They finally adapted that game, but now the Ducks have seen it. This is a tough game because these teams have already played this season. It's hard to beat a good team twice. Oregon did beat the Buckeyes, but it was close. One, they were at home. Then there was the whole sliding thing at the very end of the game with Will Howard. It's very hard to have the same game plan. It's hard to beat the same team twice. We always hear that over and over again, but what really stands out is it's hard to game plan against the same team twice. They already know what your game plan is. You can't roll out the next game with the same game plan. The Buckeyes know how Oregon wanted to attack them game 1. Vertical, deep, chunk plays, deep passing the ball. They had those targets open. Buckeyes have a very, very talented secondary. Top 3 secondary in the nation, might have the best secondary in the nation. They can take the passing game away from Oregon. How does Oregon adapt? How do the Buckeyes adapt versus the way Oregon wants to call this game? We have to see a completely different version. The Buckeyes are hot right now, but what version of the Buckeyes do we get? Do we get the Michigan Wolverine game Buckeyes, or do we get the Tennessee Volunteer Buckeyes? A lot of people pick Oregon to win this game, but after seeing the Buckeyes play, they've jumped ship. Now nobody can beat the Buckeyes. The Ducks haven't changed. The Ducks didn't even play last week, so it's not like they got any worse, but we saw what Ohio State was capable of. That's the thing. But we've known that all year. We know that they might be the most talented team in the nation. Number 3 overall roster, according to ESPN. Ducks have the number 5. Both of these teams are talented, but which version do we get? Whoever brings their A game and brings the best version of themselves is going to win this game. Right now, the Buckeyes, 53.6% chance to win this game. 2.5-point favorites. The over here is going to be 54.5. This game is going to be close. I personally don't want to go anywhere near the betting for this game because it's going to be rough. These teams are very, very evenly matched. Buckeyes come in. Howard, he's closing on 3,200 yards, 29 touchdowns, 9 picks. He also has 7 rushdowns. They're averaging 36 points a game, throwing for 264.9, running for 168.2. We know their offensive line is banged up, but when you open up that passing game, they might have the best wide receiver core in the nation. That passing game is going to open up lanes in the rushing game, and then vice versa. The rushing game is going to open up lanes in the passing game through the play action. They are throwing for 264.9, running for 168.2, but it's that number 1 defense still to this day, only giving up 11.4 points per game. The number 1 defense in all of college football, only giving up 161 passing yards per game. A crazy elite secondary. They're loaded at the safety position, only giving up 101 on the ground. But the Oregon Ducks have 17-year senior Dylan Gabriel. This guy graduated high school in like 2004. He's still playing college football. Right now he's closing in on 3,600 yards, 28 touchdowns, 6 picks. He's extremely accurate, perfectly fits this system. They're averaging 35.9, throwing for 286.2, running for 171.8. Both teams have mobile quarterbacks. Both teams have quarterbacks who can scramble, extend plays, get the first down with their legs. They're only giving up 17.8 points a game. The Buckeyes get the edge slightly on defense, but that doesn't mean Oregon, they also have a top 20 defense, so they're no slouch there. These teams very even across the board. For the playmakers, obviously the Buckeyes, one of the better 1-2 running back punches in the nation. Quinton Junkins, Henderson going off, especially right now when you need him. He looked elite versus Tennessee. And then the wide receiver core is just loaded. Smith, Egbuka, both of those guys are going to be first-round picks when they come out. And looking at Oregon, they have James closing in on 1,300 yards on the ground. Johnson, Stewart, loaded at the skill positions as well. Who's going to be able to stretch this field? This game to me is a pick-em. It's a 50-50. I would not be surprised. I originally had Oregon winning the national championship this season. I had them winning this game. I'm just going to double down. I'm not going to change my mind because Oregon didn't have the chance to play this past weekend. Buckeyes, we saw what they were capable of, but I've known that's what they were capable of the whole season. If the Buckeyes win this game, would not surprise me in any way whatsoever. Then to me, they are the front runners to win the national championship. But I'm going to go with Oregon pulling off the upset here, winning this one 33-31. Very, very close game, just like the first round. And then our final game of round one, we're also going to have coming up on the 1st at 8:45 p.m. on ESPN, the All-State Sugar Bowl. Number 7 Notre Dame, 12-1, coming off of that elite level win in round 1 versus the Indiana Hoosiers. They'll be playing number 2, the Georgia Bulldogs, 11-2. Georgia, 1.5-point favorites. The game's practically a pick-em, but Notre Dame has a 53.8% chance to win this game. The over in here is going to be 44.5. The big thing for the Georgia Bulldogs is there's going to be, obviously, we all knew this, but no Carson Beck in this game. So they're going to be going with their backup quarterback. He's had elite play when he stepped in to fill in for Carson Beck their last game, but Gunnar Stockton, a lot of pressure is going to be on him. This is going to be his first start, and it's going to be versus a top 10 Notre Dame defense. They get after it. Freeman, Denbrock, Golden, very good coaching staff for Notre Dame. Golden's going to have a lot of pressure. They want to get after Gunnar Stockton. They want to get in his face. They want to force some errant throws, and hopefully that's going to lead to turnovers. Notre Dame, very one-dimensional team. Riley Leonard, I've been very harsh on him. Not a good passer in any way whatsoever, but he can run. He's a very mobile guy. The running game, like I've been saying, opens up that play action. He's serviceable passing the ball. Georgia, this is not the Georgia team of old. This is not the Georgia team that we've seen for the last 5 to 7 years. They don't have a good defense this season. They have a very serviceable, above average, slightly good defense, but it's not a sub 13 point per game defense like we've seen. They're actually over 20 points per game this year. They're giving up points. They're giving up passing yards. They're giving up rushing yards. Can Notre Dame turn that into points right now? Looking at this team, obviously Notre Dame, Riley Leonard closing on 2,300 yards, 17 touchdowns, 6 picks. It's what he can do with his legs. He has 15 rushing touchdowns, set the season record for Notre Dame this past game. He's going to be running. He's going to be running a lot. I would be running him every other play, nonstop. Love him keeping the ball on the ground, getting those first downs, control time of possession. Keep the ball away from Georgia's offense's hands. Just run the clock down. 7 to 8 minute possessions every single time that you possess the ball. Notre Dame, they're averaging 38.8, throwing for 203.5, running for 222.4 yards per game. That's a top 15 rushing team in the nation. Can they translate that into success versus the Georgia Bulldogs defensive line? But it's that defense. They're only giving up 13.8 points a game. It's a top 5 defense in the nation. Georgia, Gunnar Stockton, we don't have a lot of tape on him. That's the unknown. I hate the unknowns here. We just haven't seen enough of him this season. But they're averaging 33.2 points a game, throwing for 297.3, running for 129.1. The biggest issue for Georgia is they got away from what they used to be really good at, running the ball nonstop. They don't have any elite running back this season. Maybe Stockton can change that. He's more of a mobile guy. Maybe that's going to open up the ground game. But that Notre Dame defensive line, they're going to be getting after it. Keep Stockton in the pocket, force Georgia to throw the ball, force them into 3rd and long situations. They're running for 129.1. They're giving up 20.4 points a game. Georgia used to always be sub 13. The defense has been a little shaky. If you don't believe that, just go watch the Georgia Tech game. That's the type of game that can translate here versus Notre Dame because they want to attack them the similar way. Georgia Tech and King, they were able to consistently run from the quarterback position on Georgia on Georgia's linebacker core. Can Riley Leonard mimic that in this game and pull off the win? Because obviously Notre Dame's defense is much, much better than Georgia Tech's, but they are giving up 20.4 points per game. Looking at the playmakers for Notre Dame, it's going to be Leonard throwing the ball on the play action, scrambling a lot. He's probably going to have, I'd say, 70 to 80 yards on the ground here for them to win. They have Jeremiah Love, great season closing in on 1,100 yards. The wide receiver core is lacking. The best wide receiver core they've had in some time, but it's not very deep. They have Collins, and for Georgia, they're going to have Frazier, they're going to have Etienne Smith, but they need the running back room to step up. They want to attack Notre Dame the same way, keep the ball on the ground, control time of possession. Georgia is the favorite. What do I have happening this game? I already said it in my bracket predictions video. I have Notre Dame winning a very close one here, 23-20. This game could go either way. It might sound crazy to the SEC fans for me to pick Notre Dame, but I think their defense is going to make the difference here versus the inexperienced Gunnar Stockton. So that's our breakdown of all of our round 2 matchups. Make sure to hit that like button. Make sure to subscribe. If you have any comments, please drop them below, and I will respond. Thank you.